Well, Tom, coming into this talk about goals, as we often are talking about, and this question that I posted, of course, the clip that your father Zig talked about, or that gave us, talking about encountering obstacles and not giving up, and that story that you've related as well, the airline pilot, you take off in the plane, you're never perfectly on course. You have to adjust and adjust. You don't just go back and start over or abandon it. Now, I say that though I don't want to minimize, Tom, the struggle that it is to take something. And I really, here's my avatar, Tom, is the person out there who has something that they have a desire for. They have a goal they want to go after, and they may not have any encouragement in their life. They may have discouragement, literal discouragement from those close to them. And yet it's something that they really want to go after. They believe is possible, and they are dealing with the obstacles, the challenges, the risk at the forefront, and those who have started along. And you think, man, this is what I'm supposed to do. I am committed. And they hit those challenges. It is hard. And I don't want to minimize that. You and I have done so many things in our past, and I have stories that I'm grateful for the redemption, but man, in the midst of it, it was hard. And that question of, was I really supposed to do this? Not only am I doing it the right way, but was I really supposed to do this? And how many goals, big endeavors are never started to begin with. And then how many that are stopped. People quit because of these very real issues.
Yeah, one of my kind of favorite quotes that kind of gives me a little bit of inspiration and encouragement is a Zig Ziglar quote. Dad said this. He said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn to do it well. And so when we're in a place in life where we have some big goals, a dream, maybe we want to pay off a debt, or we want to buy a house, or, change careers, or start a business, or, just really get into an area of life we've never been before. You know what? If our approach walking into it is not how good is this and how easy is it, but rather how much do I learn and how much progress do I make, even if I make just a tiny bit of progress, that changes everything.
Yeah.
And the example that I love is, and I think I heard this on a Dave Ramsey episode, and somebody was calling in and they're like, Dave, I don't know what to do. And he's like, what do you mean? And he said, well, we had this plan to be out of debt by the end of the year, and we were on track. And guess what? We're pregnant. What should we do? And so Dave, in all his wisdom, gives out a big laugh, and he's like, oh, congratulations. This is awesome. He said, you got to put your get out of debt plan on the side, and you just got to pile up the cash, right? Because baby's coming, and we need to have a reserve in case something happens. And then he says, but it doesn't mean that as soon as everything's fine, you're not going to go back to the ultimate goal of getting out of debt. And I think that's the way we need to look at it in life, that whatever the setback, the challenge, the thing that we didn't expect, whenever that comes, it doesn't change our decision to go there. It just might change how long it takes and the directions that we have to kind of navigate in order to get there.
Absolutely. Okay. Let me give you another perspective too, that was on my heart, on my mind when I heard this message from your dad, was how often in my past have I had a vision, a desire, hopefully something that God put on my heart, but a direction I wanted to go, and I believed in it and I went after it. And the moral of the story later on is I achieved it. However, I kept learning, sometimes harder than others, that it very seldom came out. The journey was not what I saw. And I have some hard times of saying, okay, I got the idea, God, and now I'm going to go, and I got it. And then later on, I'm going, okay, God, where are you? You're going to catch up here or help me, because I had taken it and gone my own way. And so often I would see God who would be faithful to that vision, but not in the way that I saw it. And that was such a long journey of understanding and learning. And I hope maturity for me of saying now, okay, here I got the vision. Okay, I'm going to do the best that I can. Kind of like what Zig said in the message. I'm going to go as far as I can. I can only see this far. And Lord, I'm looking for your direction. That's the point. I'm looking for your direction. And then boom. Okay. I wouldn't have thought that, but that's the door that you're opening. And I save so much time and heartache, not trying to go a direction that only I see, bashing down doors, but being open to that course correction, just like, the story there of the pilot again. And I think that is human nature to say, okay, here's how I'm going to go. And here's how I see it happening. And I think that learning to knock myself off that pedestal going, I don't know how it's going to work out. I believe that this is where we're supposed to get to. I don't know. Let's start walking and be open to listening. I mean, this goes back to, not to just stay on a biblical tangent, but back to, Moses and the Israelites in the wilderness. I've always been enamored when he gave them manna, right? He gave it to them for that day and did not allow them to save it overnight. I don't like that. I want the plan now. Tell me what I'm going to go so I can be secure. I don't want to have to wake up every day and go, okay, God, what do I do today? And have to listen. It's not what I naturally want to do. But that, my goodness, I violated that so often to my own detriment. And I want people to hear that too, and be okay with the fact that, again, back to Zig's message, we don't have to have it all figured out. As a matter of fact, we can't have it all figured out. So you want to start a business and get to XYZ, you can't have it all figured out. So if you're waiting for that to happen, good luck. You're going to have to figure out some along the way, but there's that balance, right, Tom? Because you also don't want to just go off willy nilly with no concept in sight, but we've got to find there's a tension there.
Yep. And I think one of the things when we talk about this, if it's a significant stretch goal or dream, it has to be in alignment with your why, your purpose, your overall reason for life, right? I mean, is it going to fulfill a major gotta have, in your life, a purpose? Does it help your family and your relationships and your health and all the things that you want to accomplish? I know a lot of times, and I see this, is that people will make a big commitment to go and do something. Let's just say they want to become a doctor. And that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're probably preparing for that idea in high school so that you can get accepted into the right college. And then in college, you are not only taking difficult coursework, but you're having to rank in the top of the class in order to get into the right medical school. And then when you go to medical school, you've got to, do well so that when you graduate from medical school, you can get the positioning that you want. And so the question is why do you want all that? What's the why behind the why behind the why? So sometimes people, they give up because they never attach those two things. And that just goes back to a foundational thing. And the world understands it this way. Don't lean your ladder against the wrong building.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you go through all the work and you get there and you become a doctor, and then you look up and you're like, okay, I'm a doctor, where's the fulfillment? Where's the satisfaction? Probably you never took the time to connect it to who you are and what your purpose, what your role is, your why. And so the other thing will happen too. It may be something that you really, really think you want, and then all the obstacles come, but because it's not attached to your why, you give up sooner than you should.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of health goals are that way.
Mm-hmm.
We know we should be in good shape. We know we should eat right. We know we should do the exercise. We know we should get enough sleep. We know we should take the nutrition, and then we fall off again, but we haven't really connected it to, the fun of our grandkids, right? Or the enjoyment of being able to travel without any extra effort or mobility or whatever the situation is. So we got to attach whatever that goal is to the big why behind it.
No, I appreciate you said that about that health and wellness. Most of the things that we do there are shoulds. I'm doing XYZ because I should, without any, as you said, tangible goal of why do I want to do this really for me? Oh, well, to what you just said, Tom, about the why, here's what Lori Serchik, she posted in response to the question. She said, I found so much value learning meditation. After a year of daily practicing, I decided I wanted to become a certified coach to teach the method I've been practicing. So I signed up to become a meditation teacher. The unexpected part was how I was going to come up with the money to pay for this training. I work in the corporate world, make a decent amount of money, but this training was going to be way outside of my budget. I literally Googled how to make fast cash and came across Instacart, which is grocery shopping for people. In June, I made my deposit and have since started my training. This is all while working my full-time job, pursuing my degree, being a mom and a wife, and recently accepting a nomination for the National Society of Leadership and Success through my university. And this is what she ends with. Anything is possible when you determine your why. It does come back. I mean, it's such a gigantic part of that seems, I mean, it seems elementary, but then you and I know in the world, I mean, we work in personal development, how often people go after things, and I'm going to include me in that, people go after things. And I haven't really clarified, why am I doing this? It's a should, it's a, realistic pursuit. It just seems to make sense, yada, yada, whatever it is. And I haven't determined why. And when I don't, then when those obstacles come up that do, it's just near impossible not to abandon it. So I think you just brought out the root issue, Tom.
Yeah, I love that. At Ziglar, one of the things that we do is we help coaches, right? So we have a choose to win coaching system, and people who want to have a coaching business or who want to grow as a coach, they can come through, and we teach and educate and equip them on how to be a fantastic coach. And then we come alongside them and we provide the support so they can be a coach. And all that takes an investment. And then that coach then goes out and then they engage with other people, hopefully to coach them. And this is one of the things that we tell people. People don't buy coaching, but they do invest in their dreams. And so that story of, I want to be a meditation coach, or I want to help others through meditation, that was a dream. And so once the dream is there, then the willingness to do whatever it takes to go earn the extra money to afford it in the midst of everything else is there. You know what else is interesting about that story? Dad used to talk about Roger Staubach. Now, Roger Staubach, for our younger listeners, he was Captain America for the Dallas Cowboys. He was the quarterback, legendary, and he played football at the Naval Academy. And this is what Roger Staubach said. He made his best grades in the Naval Academy during football season. Huh. And the reason was simple. He said, my schedule was so tight because we had 2 workouts a day, game preparation, all the naval requirements that they have as you go through an academy like that, and his academic requirements. He said that his grades were always better during football season because everything had to be scheduled perfectly. In other words, he had a name for every minute of the day. And so that's what happens when there's a dream that comes to life, something that is something that you want to realize and your schedule's already packed. You will find that your performance in other areas of life actually go up in the midst of it because you're having to schedule and be disciplined to a routine. And when you get scheduled and disciplined to a routine, even when setbacks come along the way, it raises your game everywhere else. And I'm not talking about, maintaining something like that for years. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for a period of time when we get laser focused, that's what happens.
That is great, man. I am more productive in the specific areas of my life when I am having success in all those. I'm involved in all those. When I'm just, sometimes we think, if I'm going to pull, I got to pull way back so I don't have anything going on so I can do this one thing. And it's like a success begets success type aspect. And you pulled out a couple things, man. Yeah. Talking to coaches, that people don't buy coaching, they buy dreams, they buy their results. It's just always a great wake up call for us to remember, especially when we're doing our marketing and our social media stuff. And we're talking about promoting whatever it is, my coaching, my widget, my whatever. People don't care. They care about, here's what I can help you get. So thanks for putting that out there, Tom. Hey, here's a neat one. Sovan, he says, finding a career that suited him was the big journey. He went to grad school for 10 years. He was thought he was supposed to, should pursue medical school or becoming an Army chaplain. And what he ended up becoming was a counselor. And what's neat here is Amy Van Slambrook. She responds quite a bit. She is a successful coach and counselor. And she responded, she apparently knows him. And she says, and you became an exceptional one at that. Again, that, looking and saying, I feel like I should do this. I feel like I should serve people in this way. And we're often so narrow-minded in how we see that. We usually think about how to achieve that in regards to some circumstantial exposure that we've had. So if you think you're supposed to serve somebody, you talk about being a doctor, and your dad's a doctor, that's kind of the road you just go down. You don't really consider these other ways that you could, just because you haven't been exposed to them, which again is a great thing to have a coach for, to help you expand on those. But man, we see that so often when people have an ideal of, especially you mentioned, Tom, a role that they want to fulfill. And we tend to just, again, we only know what we know. And that what's dangerous is we don't know what we don't know. And that's what get into coach. And this isn't just a pitch for getting to coach, getting mentorship, just asking people, talking about it, getting exposure, reading different things to give you, again, just increase exposure. How could I do this? It'd be a great thing for everybody to do. Look, this is what I want to do. This is the role, as you said, Tom, that I want to fulfill. How many ways? I mean, we'd probably be best never to go after everything until we've exhausted how many different ways could I achieve this goal. You talked about being a doctor, Tom. I don't know how many stories I've heard of people who went after being a doctor for whatever reason, then to only realize that the actual role, the methodology of fulfilling that role every day really had them engage in things that didn't suit them at all. Not at all. It could even be a different type of doctoring fit. Oh my gosh, I would have done well as a surgeon, but I'm terrible at family practice. Or I would have done well as a dentist. Man, I'm terrible at this. That we don't, again, look at how can we, or what's it going to entail in that end, again, back to what you said, Tom, in that end role.
Absolutely. And when we know who we are, where we're going, then that gives us the clues of how we can get there. When we know our tendencies, when we know what it is that's really driving us, then that gives us the platform to run on. One other thing that I want to set out here is that I saw a post today on Facebook, and it said, blah, 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 do the work, right? So we can talk about, this has got to be right and that's got to be right. But at the end of the day, you have to do the work. And so another principle on this is that when you've identified your big goal, your dream, the thing that you're working towards, you need to be very, very specific on what are the measurables that I can do every single day to get me closer to that goal. Because I don't care if you're Michael Phelps, who worked out, I think he had a workout 7 days a week for over a couple of years leading up to an Olympics. I mean, his mantra was, well, everybody else works out 6 days and takes off 1. So for the next 4 years, I'm going to work out every day. That'll give me 200 extra workouts. How many times do you think that he prepared when he didn't feel like it?
A lot.
And so what do we mean? Well, if we know why we're doing it, and then we identify specifically what it is that we're going to go after, and then we break it down using a system, a goal setting system, and we know the measurables that we've got to do on a daily and weekly basis to get there, we make the commitment to do it even when we don't feel like doing it. Yeah. And this is another great Zig Ziglar quote: logic will not change an emotion, but action will. Logic will not change an emotion, but action will. And so, right now at Ziglar, we've got a promotion going on for our performance planner The performance planner is the ultimate tool to help you stay focused on the measurables so that you follow through and do what you should do to get what you want, even when you don't feel like it. And that really is, that's really a difference in maturity levels. And so, how do you gain the maturity to do something even when you don't feel like doing it? You just do it, right? And you set your day up and your priorities to make that happen.
Yep. Hey, you're talking about the performance planner. I saw the promo. Check this out.
Oh,
Everybody
that's an old one.
see that one?
Yeah, that one's black gold right there.
Uh-huh. This is Jennifer, March 87, 1987. I would have been 16 years old. And check, can you see that's your dad right there, man. I stood in line. He looked me in the eye. See you at the top, Kevin. Zig Ziglar, Ephesians 2:8-9. And if I'm right though, this is the recent one.
Yes, that's the recent one.
There you go. I probably got that a couple years ago, maybe last year. Ziglar headquarters. Yep. Powerful stuff right there, man. All right. Wayne Myers, he says, for him, the journey pivoting out of mainstream corporate world at 50 and leaving a high paying position to pursue a calling to be a financial coach. The company I worked with for 10 years made big changes. I found myself just not fitting in anymore. God does some funny things and he laid it out and put things in place. The biggest haha, he says, was leaving in January of this year and then having the world go into panic mode. It led to a lot of prayers and trusting his calling in my life. That right there, being in a long-term corporate position, making good money, that is what we call the golden handcuffs. Probably one of the hardest things to leave for anyone. Once you have built up, kind of like building up, seniority or tenure, man, that is hard to leave to go. I talk about risk, talk about something that you will often, in that perspective, you will seldom have a lot of encouragement for. Most people are going to say, man, you should be grateful for the job you have just because it doesn't fit you and thrill you so much anymore. Man, you should not leave that now, especially at 50 years old. Like, that's old. It's not old. But that is difficult. That right there is a place where people find themselves lonely. They feel like they're on their own, and doubt is paramount. And I don't know a better thing to do than to find, back to Roar, Jim, find some people to hang around that will support you, that have done something similar to that. Get a coach, get a mentor, and you need some support. It is very hard to go it alone in that perspective.
Absolutely. Whether it's the books you read, the audios or programs you listen to, or the people you associate with, one of the foundational questions is what I'm about to do, is it going to take me closer to or further from my objective? And so what we want to focus on is we want to intentionally do things in our life that move us towards our ultimate goals and objectives and our dreams. And what does that mean? Hey, you know what? Part of my aspiration, I want to have great relationships. I want to have deep, meaningful relationships. I want to do work that matters. When I do something, I want to solve a problem. I want to be rewarded with a certificate of appreciation, right? We call that money. And then that's what Rabbi Lapin says. And then I want somebody to follow up and say, hey, what I learned has changed my life. One of the questions that just came in was, well, how much should I read? How much should I listen to? What is it? What is the proper amount of books to read in a year? Or how much should I listen in a lifetime? And this is what I would tell you. Now, this is I think probably based on the timing of this recommendation, it's more important than ever. One of the challenges in our world today is bias. And we see it in social media. We see it in the news. We see all these places. The vast majority of information that's coming across the airways and through the channels is negative. That quote that I think I've said it the last 3 or 4 times we've been on. The way you see your future determines your thinking today. And your thinking today determines your performance today. And your performance today has a large bearing on the future that you create. And so when somebody says, how much should I read? How much should I listen to? I would ask this question: how rock solid is your thinking? Do you have a vision of the future you want to create? Is it hopeful and positive and optimistic? Do you believe that the choices you make really do determine the future that you can create? That you are capable of learning whatever you need to learn in order to achieve the things that are going to take you to the next level? Are you open and aware of new information that comes in that might course correct your path just a little bit to even a better direction? If you can say no to that, you're not ready, then you need to scale down all the negative input and increase the positive, increase the reading of the good stuff, increase the listening of the good stuff until it becomes automatic. I know a lot of people who will do one book a week. I do about maybe 3 or 4 books a month myself, but most of it's audible. I am double dipping. I'm doing it on the elliptical. I'm doing it while I'm driving. I'm doing other things. But what I look for in my own life is, do I expect good things to happen, or am I perpetually on alert of what's next going to happen? Is my attitude negative, and do I believe that no matter who wins, it's going to be a disaster? Or instead, do I focus on what it is I can do in my own life to improve my life and those I love? You need to put as much in until your mindset is, it doesn't matter what everybody else does. I have control of what's in here. I have control of the work that I put out, and I'm going to be able to succeed to my ability no matter what happens on the outside.
I love that. I saw that too. Richard there on Facebook posted that question: how many books and whatnot? And it's really a great question. You talked about, you listen, Tom. I don't listen to stuff at all. I listen to music in the background while I read. I have a really hard time comprehending things auditorially. So I read, and which is better? Doesn't matter, whatever you can comprehend. But on that amount, man, on one hand, I feel like unlimited. I mean, the more you put in, back to your dad's quote, you're who you are and where you are because of what you put into your mind. You can change who you are and where you are and what you are and everything by what you put in your mind. So the more the merrier. I mean, Seth Godin is famous for saying, look, if you're reading stuff, listening stuff, even if you don't think you're listening or paying attention, it's getting in. So to that degree, unlimited. But Richard, when I saw that question, my first thought was, it doesn't really matter how much. It matters how often. Like a certain, I think allotting a certain amount of your day. Your dad was famous for 3 hours a day, wasn't he, of reading? Wasn't that kind of his benchmark?
The first 3 hours in the morning were reading, research, prayer, devotional, deep thinking. So not only would he read something and study something, he would. Here's the Zig Ziglar secret that I tell people is his intent was to learn something new that he could internalize and simplify, and then share it with someone else for their benefit. If you just did that every day, let's just say you spent 10, 15, even 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Just absorbing something new, internalizing it, simplifying it, and then sharing it with someone else for their benefit. That's going to change your life. Why? The motive is right. The motive is about other people. And so when somebody said, how did Zig Ziglar end up the way he did? It was that motive. He was always on this treasure hunt. Hey, there's something new I can learn. There's something out there that I didn't know, that if I put it into what I already do know, that's going to be the message that changes somebody's life.
Yeah.
In a business, if our goal is to satisfy the client and get it done without any hassle, we're going to achieve one level of success. If our goal was in every encounter, create an experience that they'll never forget, that creates another level of success. And if you're in there anyway, why not go for the experience, right? Why not take it to that next level? I know Seth Godin, you just mentioned his name, Kevin. He always laments about how, These huge companies will spend millions of dollars acquiring new customers, right? And advertising and marketing. And then when the customer service side gets one of these customers on the phone, they evaluate and rate the customer service agents by how quick they get them off the phone. Their goal should be to keep them on the phone as long as possible and wow them with an experience and let them know all the other things they have to offer. But what do we do in life, right? We take for granted and give the minimum expectation to those who are already on the inside, and then we fall over all over ourselves on those that are on the outside trying to bring them in. Golly, we got to give the experience to those who are already part of the family, and then they'll share that experience, and that's how we get new people in. Well, our self-development should be the same way. We should fall all over ourselves to up our game just a little bit every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that, Tom, one other thought for you, Richard, for everybody who's contemplating that question, you would also be just fine to read one book every quarter, one book, and read that sucker every day. Study it, learn it, engage with it, and change. That is another part of it that I sometimes get a little heartburn with, Tom, when I hear somebody say, oh yeah, I read 3 personal development books every day or every week, every week, whatever, some impressive number is. And yet sometimes I'll see some of those people and realize, what, you're reading it, it's great, but it's kind of like positive entertainment. You're not really changing a whole lot. I'd rather see you change and slow down on the books, whatever does it for you. Again, we're looking at what gives you the results you're looking for. Hey, here's one, Jimmy Ziglar. You know that name?
I know Jimmy.
Yeah. He says, hey, Kevin, I moved to Dallas back in August of last year to be part of Ziglar Inc. and to be a part of a different branch of my Ziglar family tree. Being a part of the Ziglar Monday morning devotions changed my life so much for the better. But since this pandemic started, we haven't been having our meetings. And on top of that, my job was deemed non-essential. So I had to leave Dallas and go back to LA, which he says is Lower Alabama. And at the moment, I'm about 25 miles from where old cousin Zig was actually born before he moved to the big city of Yazoo City, Mississippi. The goal that I had was just to maintain a healthy and positive attitude. And to be honest, I'm killing it. I'm staying in touch with everyone from Ziglar. And I'm so happy to say that I'll have the opportunity to speak at the Ziglar Monday morning devotions on, I think he says February 1st, which is your birthday, Tom.
It is.
Look at that.
My birthday. How about that?
He says, I feel honored, privileged, and proud to have the opportunity to get to know all the folks who are a huge part of my Ziglar family. And you guys are the great ones. I appreciate that. How many people, this is a great time. How many people had certain plans and aspirations this year, 2020, and March hit, and they were blown out of the water. We know it's an unprecedented thing in our lifetime, Tom, and they have had to, they had the opportunity to adjust. Some people have, some people haven't. I know some people who have adjusted and they're doing far better off. And of course, there are people who did not adjust and were not able to for whatever reason. And man, it is bad news. But for him to showcase, that's why I wanted to share that one, that his circumstances, he came and here it is, man. It's a holy, it's a new land. It's the promised land, right? And yet it didn't work out in that way that he thought. So he had to go back, and yet he's benefiting anyways. He had to adjust to the challenge, to the circumstance, to that obstacle. He had to move back. That's a big deal. And yet the benefit he was looking forward to, he has found he can still walk out. That goes back to what you brought up, Tom. He has a strong why. And when we do, we're able to, like the pilot you talked about, adjust.
That's right. There's a quote that I've kind of settled in on, and I've been studying pandemics and black swan events. A black swan event is something that maybe comes along once in a lifetime. It's a game changer. If you were the tsunami that impacted all those countries a number of years ago, that's a black swan event. The pandemic is a black swan event. So they study, what is it that people who do the best, what do they do differently in a black swan event? Here's what they do, is they let go of the past. They never expect it to go back to the way it was, and they accept the way it is now. They actually embrace it and start to create the future that they want. And this is a tough thing. So on an individual level, what can a black swan event be? It can be losing a business or losing a job, or, having hey, we're moving to a new place and all these great things are going to happen. And suddenly a pandemic happens and you can't do that anymore. And so how do you climb out of that situation? Well, the first thing you got to do is recognize, hey, we can never go back. It's never going to be the way it was. But you know what? The world, it's different now. There's all kinds of new problems out there. There are all kinds of issues that people have. How can I serve other people in this trying time? What are the problems that I can solve? And so we adapt our attitude to say, hey, in this new world, the new way it is, what can I do to get closer to my dreams and goals? And by the way, serve and support and help others along the way to get theirs as well. That's a big key right now. So for those listeners who are really struggling because this isn't what you hope for, and we're all waiting, is the vaccine coming? Is there going to be a treatment? How long is it going to be? I'm telling you, you'll be ahead of the game to say, you know what, it might never come. That's okay, because right now, today, I can start making decisions and choices on how to create the future I want in this new environment. And when I get focused on solutions and taking action, that alone will lift my spirits and get me closer to where I want to go.
Yes. You reminded me just of our human propensity to embark on that new journey, towards that new destination, that new goal, when things are optimal. We're waiting, we're going, okay, when this happens and when this is in place and when this runway is clear, then I'm going to do it. We wait for an optimal time, which again, I'm not dissing that. There's some relevance there, and here we are. This is Ziglar, right? We're optimists. We think positive. It's not pessimistic, however, to think, okay, things are going to get rough. What do I do then? And we're back to your why of looking at, is my why big enough for things to go south from what I expect, for the conditions not to be optimal, and continue on. And we can look at that endeavor and say, yeah, I believe in it enough, or I want it enough to withstand when this big challenge, when this big obstacle happens. Then you're prepared for it. If you're waiting for things to be optimal and expecting it to be optimal, it's Ziglar. We're about expectations. We're expecting the best. We're expecting the best outcome. I don't expect the best perfect journey though, Tom. And there's I don't think that's being pessimistic. That is being a realist and saying, look, if it has any worth, it is going to get hard. So am I prepared to pursue this, to continue on, even when things go very differently from what I expect, what I want my optimal to be? Because I just think they will. And again, I don't think that's being pessimistic. That's, if anything, it's being optimistic, saying, look, I am positive I'm going to keep going, even if I have to change course, even if it has to come in a different flavor, different vehicle, a different methodology, I'm going to stay the course. That's about, I want people prepared for that. I want people to be prepared for that hard thing that's going to happen. And I keep coming back to that. It almost does feel negative to say that, but it's just going to. I don't want you to stop or not start. That's the point of the show here. Katarzyna here. She says everything she's gone after has not gone like she expected it to go. She says, I always wanted to go to college. I finally started when I was almost 23. I went full time during school. I got married, followed that with 2 kids. Somehow we did it. We moved to Florida. We intended to do the empty nester post-college retirement move, but somehow, total God thing, we moved there only 3 years ago, and we're establishing there with 13-year-old and 9-year-old girls. I published my first book. I intended to go the traditional route, shop agents. Instead, I self-published it. Then it got picked up by a publisher, and on and on and on. So she just outlined these things that she thought she wanted to do. It didn't happen like she thought it would, but it happened. And that's the one that I'm just enamored with, Tom. I think it's just part of my initial wiring that I thought that I would be able to envision how things would happen. I mean, who doesn't want to know how is it going to happen? We all want to know that, but to look out here and to realize that, man, if we feel called to something, we feel committed to it, it can happen. But again, I don't know many people, if I pick on entrepreneurs and business owners, that when they look back, go, you know what, man? It actually happened exactly like I thought it would happen. I mean, we joke about that, but to realize that if we did, that'd be a great survey, Tom. That'd be a great survey that would benefit everybody listening to this topic here, to take successful people who have started a business, they're successful today, and say, for how many of them, how many of you, how many of you experienced it going just like you expected it to go to get to the level that you are today? I honestly don't know if there's any. I think it's impossible. That should be unbelievably freeing for all of us at the outset. You should write a book on that, Tom. There's your
Yeah.
next book. Okay.
Well, I think Angela Duckworth kind of wrote a book on that. And the book was called Grit.
I've heard you talk about that one. I have not read that one yet, Tom.
And basically what it says is one of the things that these goal achievers, these people who accomplish these big things have in common is grit. And that is they get knocked down, they get back up, right? They persevere, they keep going. The world says, you can't do that. And they say, watch me. And so that's another thing. And this is something that's interesting is, tenacity, that's not a degree that you go in a higher education and graduate with a degree in tenacity. That's just an unwavering perseverance to follow through and make it happen. And so when you apply tenacity and wisdom, when you put those two things together and you keep moving forward and you keep moving forward, but you're always learning every time you find a way that doesn't work. I was reading about, I think it was Thomas Edison. And the comment is that when he would go fishing, he wouldn't put any bait on his hook. And people noticed that when he went fishing, he never caught anything. And so they asked him, why don't you catch anything? And he said, well, when you don't put bait on your hook, you're not going to catch anything, but it's the best thinking time you will ever have. So on one of those fishing outings where he was actually thinking, he got the idea to use bamboo filament for the light bulb. And that was the original filament. And so what was he doing? He was tenacious. He was trying all these hundreds and thousands of ways that didn't work, but he was also applying his brain, his thinking to what else can I do different? What can I do different? What can I do different? So that we'll call it wise grit. Maybe that sounds like a Southern meal.
I was going to say it's pretty good.
Yeah, you just don't stop. You never give up. But every time you have an experience, you say, what did I learn? What worked? What didn't work? What can I do different? And then you go after it again. That's what gets you there.
Yes. It makes, as you're talking there, the necessity, the value of being fluid and flexible in what we're going after. And I think that I'm going to pick again on business startup or, just taking a new direction in your life, that we want to be able to answer that question that's going to come from those who are close to us that says, oh, how are you going to do that? And we think we have to answer that. And I'm going to give you freedom again to say, you know what? I don't know. Because you can't. It's really arrogant and foolish to say, I know exactly how I'm going to do it. Now, of course, we want to get as far as we can. This goes back again to the clip that we started the show with Zig, that when we take that goal, we're going to go as far as we can see, and we can't see further till we get there. Or every step we can see a little bit further, but we've got to do that. And of course we want to have wisdom. Of course we want to do our homework. Of course, being prepared and learning and educating ourselves, surrounding us with wise people is a wise thing to do. We want to get as much as we can, but we cannot answer. I don't know how many valuable endeavors I've ever gone after where I at the time of inception said, I know exactly. Well, unfortunately, Tom, I probably did. I know I'm going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. And it didn't work out that way is my point. That we need to be able to say, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm going to do the best I can and I'm going to go forward and have some freedom of that. And it's not going to be the answer that somebody may want. And again, we're back to, I think what you've given us as the root of this show, Tom, of knowing why am I doing that and being solid in that, but then knowing I've got to be flexible in the pursuit of this because it can't go exactly how I expect it to be. There's so much peace, Tom, in my endeavors today, as opposed to even a decade ago. And I'm sure there are with yours too, a different way of going after it with peace. Not, again, you're probably working on something right now, Tom, that you don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but you have gained the faith of realizing it will. True?
Yeah, one of my stories that I just love. Dad's mentor was Fred Smith, and I had the privilege of attending Fred's memorial service. And Fred was in his 90s when he passed away, the wisest man that I ever met, and Dad's mentor. And this is what he said. He'd recorded a video that they played at his memorial service, and he was an advisor, and so he consulted with and coached and mentored CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest nonprofits. He coached and mentored the founders of those companies, and Dad was one of the people who went to him for wisdom. And Fred said this. He said, people ask me, what's the greatest lesson you ever learned in your life? And here he is in his 90s. He'd been battling, he'd been on dialysis, on a kidney dialysis. His health was failing. The last year of his life, he barely had the energy he couldn't even turn over. His daughter, Brenda, took care of him. He would wake up just completely exhausted. So his body was worn out, but his mind was sharp. And he said, this is the greatest lesson I learned. He said, I'd wake up in the morning and I didn't even have the energy to open my eyes, and God would lay something on my heart to do. And he said, I would debate with God. Look at me. I don't have the energy. I don't have the strength. Who knows how long I have, and you want me to do that? And he said, when you negotiate with God, you always lose. Mm-hmm. And so a few minutes after that negotiation, he would call his daughter Brenda over, and he would begin to dictate to her, and she would take down his notes, and that would become something that he wrote, a column or part of a blog or a book. And he said, this is when he learned the most valuable lesson of his life, the most important thing. He said, when God lays something on your heart, your only responsibility is to just start.
Yep.
You have no responsibility to know where it's going or to figure it all out in advance. Your only responsibility is to just start. And here's why. God doesn't give you the strength to overcome. He gives you the strength while you're overcoming. And so for those of you who feel called to something bigger than you could ever do on your own, that's called a calling, right? That's a huge why. That's a huge dream, something that you can't even imagine how you're going to get there. Your only responsibility is to just start. And so Fred said he would start dictating, and there you go. God would give him whatever he needed to get it done.
Hey, as you're mentioning Fred Smith, you mentioned his daughter, Brenda. We had her on the show, episode 336. So folks, if you want to check that out. Well, Tom, I think that's a great place to land on this. We had a lot of submissions, but I think people get the point here. I so want people to hear that those big goals. I didn't even see that before we started the show, Tom, which is why I love the candid nature of you coming to, when we know the why, that is what will give the strength to overcome the hurdles, the obstacles, the challenges that are going to come, that we are going to have to adjust. And again, I hope people hear freedom in that. The freedom that I have found from back when I saw a goal, I saw an objective, and I said, this is how it's going to go. And I went forward with that perspective and wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of resources, had a lot of heartache, as opposed to now of going, okay, here's the best that I can see. Let me go forward, and God direct me, through himself, through other people, seeking wisdom, seeking counsel. I can't say that enough. And as you and your dad have been telling that story about the pilot, you adjust and you adjust and you adjust. Tom, I always feel like I get the most out of these shows than anybody. I'm student number one. So I love it. Thanks for everybody who commented, and brother, always good.
All right. We'll see you next time.